Okay, we're gonna, if you have to leave, just try to do it least distracting way, if you could. I'm gonna go just a little bit over. Um, Over the last few months, I just wanted to tell you about this. I've become part of a group called the Prophecy Forum with a few other guys, Doug Krieger, Doug Woodward, Gon Shimura, and some others. And we're going to have a conference here in Dublin, November 14th and 15th. There will be an admission charge. We're also charged for the live streaming, just to help defray some of the expenses of the conference. Pay speakers, travel, all that stuff. It's very expensive to put these things on, as you can appreciate. That'll be Friday afternoon, starting about 3 o'clock, and then all day Saturday. We'll run a couple sessions. All of us will be speaking there in the group, plus we have some other people coming. I know Bill Salas is coming to talk about Psalm 83 and the prophecy of Elam. So that conference will be called A World Turned Upside Down, and it'll be over at the Dublin Community Center, November 14th and 15th. We'll have more announcements. There should be some things released about that this week. You can look at theprophecyforum.com to get some more information as we make that information available. Well, this week I want to do just a quick prophecy update. I'll try not to go over too much. We'll talk a little bit about Ebola, and then this rather ridiculous statement that was made the other day by someone in the White House about the fact that ISIL is not Islamic. So, first off, now, I don't know what the mark of the beast is going to look like. I don't think Scripture is very clear. I think that to the extent that believers are here, I think there'll be pretty specific guidance. I think it will involve some use of technology, and you see one of the things happening now. This is the Apple iWatch. I mean, Mike's got his smartphone now. It's like totally out of date. Totally behind, and it's like, I was one of the ones, I must confess, that mocked him when he carried that iPad around in that box. Now, I must admit, if you're not an Apple person, you don't understand the Apple experience, the experience of opening that wonderfully crafted box and the way the paper comes off and the cellophane. It's a wonderful experience, and I can understand why you would be attached to the box, for like a day. So anyway, but Mike Clapham, he won't take the mark of the beast because he'll be way behind. So, so that's the levity and a brief thing of levity here today. Ebola. This is nobody knows exactly where this is going. You see these statements. The U.S. scientists see a long fight against Ebola. I think this is from the New York Times either yesterday or today. These things going on. I was talking to a lady yesterday. She was going to go back to tell her at the bank she was going to go back to Liberia and get married. I'm not sure where she's from. Her husband is from Liberia. They're going to have a traditional African wedding, and they can't go back because even though Liberia, the problem is not that bad, at least so far, they travel restrictions and everything. If you went back, you don't know if you would ever be able to come back, or at least for a long period of time. And people are dying. They're saying now that it could prove to be far longer and larger than anybody suspects. The World Health Organization has come out just in the last day and said, can you get my water? The World Health Organization has come out in just the last day and said that, well, we don't really think it's going to be that much of a problem. We think we have it under control, but, and there's a big but that's involved in all this. Look at what the New York Times said in their article. While previous outbreaks have largely been confined to rural areas, the current epidemic, the largest ever, has reached densely populated, impoverished cities, including Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, gravely complicating efforts to control the spread of the disease. Alessandro Vespignani, a professor of computational sciences at Northeastern University, said that if the case count reaches hundreds of thousands, there will be little we can do. What worries public health officials is that the epidemic has begun to grow exponentially in Liberia. In the most recent reported, Liberia had nearly 400 new cases, almost double the number reported the week before. There has been no indication of any downturn in the epidemic in the three countries that have widespread and intense transmission, it said, referring to Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Dr. Lewis, the Virginia Tech epidemiologist, said that a group of scientists collaborating on Ebola modeling as part of a National Institutes of Health sponsored project called MIDAS, short for Models of Infectious Disease Agents Study, had come to a consensus on the projected 12 to 18 month duration and very high case count. Ebola has a simple trajectory because it's growing exponentially. Lone Simonson, a research professor of global health at George Washington University, said the World Health Organization estimates seem conservative and the higher projections more reasonable. The final death toll may be far higher than any of these estimates unless an effective vaccine or therapy becomes available on a large scale or many more hospital beds are supplied. If control stays the same, according to the model, the case count by October 12 will be 18,000. If control improves, it will be 7,000. If control worsens, it will soar to 54,000. That's just in 4 weeks. Before this epidemic, the largest Ebola outbreak ever was in Uganda from 2000 to 2001 and involved only 425 cases. So the numbers are not encouraging. So that's Ebola. I'm not even going to talk about this thing that's going on in Ukraine. We'll try to cover that in a future update. I want to just make reference to a little bit, Caroline Glick, in her column on Friday in the Jerusalem Post, talked about politicians and moral courage. And she compared two people. She compared the two speeches that were given on Wednesday, Barack Obama to the United States about ISIL, and Ted Cruz to a conference put on by a group called In Defense of Christians, both in Washington, D.C. He says this: in our times, evil rears its ugly head with a greater power and frequency than it has at least a generation. As Americans learned 13 years ago this week, evil ignored is evil empowered. Yet fighting evil is protecting the good, and protecting the good is not a simple matter. Evil has many handmaidens. Those who hide it away enable it. Those who justify it enable it. Those who ignore it enable it. To fight evil effectively, a leader must possess the moral wisdom to recognize that evil can only be rooted out when the environment that cultivates it is discredited and so transformed. To discredit and transform that environment, a leader must have the moral courage to stand not only against evildoers, but against their far less controversial facilitators. In other words, the foundations of true leadership are moral clarity and courage. Now, Cruz went to this dinner at the In Defense of Christians, and ahead of the dinner, the Washington Free Beacon website questioned Cruz's decision to address the group. Several Christian leaders from Lebanon and Syria, also scheduled to address the forum, had records of public support for Syrian dictator Bashar Assad and Hezbollah, and had made egregiously anti-Semitic statements. For instance, Church of Antioch Patriarch, Antioch being the first place where believers in Christ were called Christians, Patriarch Gregory III Layam blamed jihadist attacks on Iraqi Christians on, quote, a Zionist conspiracy against Islam, aimed at making Muslims look bad. So this is part of their website that they put up before the conference, In Defense of Christians. And then this is Ted Cruz speaking at the conference. It's about a 4-minute clip, and you'll be able to hear what happened during his discussion.
Tonight we are all united in defense of people of good faith who are standing together against those who would persecute and murder those who dare disagree with their religious teachings. Religious bigotry is a cancer with many manifestations. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Hamas, and their state sponsors like Syria and Iran.
So far, so good.
Are all engaged in a vicious genocidal campaign to destroy religious minorities in the Middle East. Sometimes we are told not to loop these groups together, that we have to understand their so-called nuances and differences. But we shouldn't try to parse different manifestations of evil that are on a murderous rampage through the region. Hate is hate, and murder is murder. Our purpose here tonight is to highlight a terrible injustice, a humanitarian crisis. Christians are being systematically exterminated. In 1948, Jews throughout the Middle East faced murder and extermination and fled to the nation of Israel. And today, Christians have no greater ally than the Jewish state. Let me say this: those who hate Israel hate America. And those who hate Jews hate Christians. And if this room will not recognize that, then my heart weeps that the men and women here will not stand in solidarity with Jews and Christians alike who are persecuted by radicals who seek to murder them. If you hate the Jewish people, you are not reflecting the teachings of Christ. And the very same people who persecute and murder Christians right now, who crucify Christians, who behead children, are the very same people who target and murder Jews for their faith for the same reason. I will say this: I am saddened
Please, respect for dialogue. Respect, please. Okay. We're in America.
I will say this: I am saddened to see that some here, not everyone, but some here, are so consumed with hate that you cannot address your brother. I will say this: if you will not stand with Israel and the Jews, then I will not stand with you. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good for him. He later released a statement that said, "Anti-Semitism is a corrosive evil, and it reared its ugly head tonight. After just a few minutes, I had no choice. I told him that if you will not stand with Israel, if you not will stand with the Jews, then I will not stand with you," and then I walked off the stage. Excuse me one moment. I need to do... 1 quick thing here. I don't have time to do the entire clip, but I thought I would play just a brief clip of, now Bill Maher, he hates Christians. He was on Charlie Rose the other night, and this is what he had to say. And I want you to watch Charlie Rose's reaction when he says this. So this is just the first part of a longer clip.
I saw Howard Dean on TV the other day, and he said something along the order of, he said, the people in ISIS are, he said, I'm about as Islamic as they are. You know, distancing the vast numbers of Islamic people around the world from it. That's just not true.
It is true.
It is not true, Charlie. There is a connecting tissue between...
you mean, behind every Muslim is a future member of some radical...
Let me finish.
I thought I was doing that.
There are illiberal beliefs that are held by vast numbers of Muslim people that I don't think...
Vast number of Christians, too.
No, that's not true. Not true. Vast numbers of Christians do not believe that if you leave the Christian religion, you should be killed for it. Vast numbers of Christians do not treat women as second-class citizens. Vast numbers of Christians
I agree with that.
do not believe that if you draw a picture of Jesus Christ, you should get killed for it. So yes, does ISIS do Khmer Rouge-like activities where they just kill people indiscriminately who aren't just like them? Yes. And would most Muslim people in the world do that or condone that? No. But most Muslim people in the world do condone violence just for what you think. They do. First of all, they say it. They shout it from the...
Vast majorities of Muslims
Absolutely.
say that?
There's a Pew poll of Egypt done a few years ago. 82%, I think it was, said stoning is the appropriate punishment for adultery. Over 80% thought death was the appropriate punishment for leaving the Muslim religion. I'm sure you know these things.
I know. Well, I do.
So,
but
to claim that this religion is like other religions is just naive and plain wrong. It is not like other religions.
And he goes on and he talks about genital mutilation. So, Bill Maher gets it right every now and then, and I'm glad that he does. But the interesting thing is Charlie Rose is considered very much mainstream, sort of middle of the road, and he has no clue as to the nature of the enemy that faces the world today. I mean, look, I'm seeing Christian websites saying that all of this is just a Mossad CIA plot. This is ridiculous, people. And now, look, is our government maybe using people like we use the Al-Qaeda to fight Russia and Afghanistan? Sure we are, but we're stupid sometimes. We fund bad people. But these people don't need encouragement to be the evil people that they are. Because their evilness rises out of their religion. So ISIS is making its way across the Middle East. Of course, they've taken over vast swaths, the dark area. There's some pushback. Of course, we're going in now. And I'm not sure the current status. I think I have a slide later, but even in the Golan Heights now, the border with Israel is all controlled by militant Islamic rebels or ISIS, the border between Syria and Israel. The UN has a camp. Quneitra is the place here that you can see from the Golan Heights if you take a tour there. Damascus, the suburbs of Damascus are about 20 miles from the Golan Heights. That's how close it is. They have a camp there. They've abandoned the camp. All their equipment, they're moving out, and they're going. It's a long war. Someone in one of the major news magazines said this week, it is a never-ending war. And I think there is going to be a major war to deal with the problem at some point. I think it's prophesied. Of course, we have some people in the White House that seem to be more interested in, you see here, the daily briefing, but inside there's Gulf Digest. And I understand that sentiment. But it requires serious people. Now, this is a Reuters picture of the president the other night. This was published. And I don't know if you noticed the way that it's done. Here's a little bit more of a close-up. So here, let's highlight just a couple parts. And then if somebody was really creative, they would make it sort of... Anyway. But here's what just a little bit of what the president had to say. So Barack Obama alert, grab your heads.
Still, we continue to face a terrorist threat. We can't erase every trace of evil from the world, and small groups of killers have the capacity to do great harm. That was the case before 9/11, and that remains true today. And that's why we must remain vigilant as threats emerge. At this moment, the greatest threats come from the Middle East and North Africa, where radical groups exploit grievances for their own gain. And one of those groups is ISIL, which calls itself the Islamic State. Now let's make two things clear. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents, and the vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. And ISIL is certainly not a state. It was formerly al-Qaeda's affiliate in Iraq and has taken advantage of sectarian strife and Syria's civil war to gain territory on both sides of the Iraq-Syrian border. It is recognized by no government, nor by the people it subjugates. ISIL is a terrorist organization, pure and simple, and it has no vision other than the slaughter of all who stand in its way. In a region that has known so much bloodshed, these terrorists are unique in their brutality. They execute captured prisoners. They kill children. They enslave, rape, and force women into marriage. They threatened a religious minority with genocide. And in acts of barbarism, they took the lives of two American journalists, Jim Foley and Stephen Sotloff. So ISIL poses a threat to the people of Iraq and Syria and the broader Middle East, including American citizens, personnel, and facilities.
Well,
and one of those groups is ISIL.
Anyway, so ISIL has now, this morning, they beheaded a British hostage. The thing that needs to be remembered in all this, and Tim Furnish over at Mahdi Watch has a pretty good summary of a critique of the president's remarks about ISIL not being Islamic, and he points out that, listen, folks, they are Islamic. They're radical. They're fundamentally Islamic. They do a lot of the things that's in the Quran. The Quran talks about beheading. It talks about killing the infidel. They've put out this publication, which comes from a hadith. The Beak is a hadith saying, which is really sort of talking about the apocalyptic vision of the end times that Muslims have. And they do. They have an eschatology. And unlike a lot of the, I guess, evangelical church anymore, they believe in their eschatology. They think it's important. They study it. And these publications have come out, and these are on English. These are not directed towards Muslims. These are directed towards people in the English-speaking world. They're trying to persuade people as to what they want, and hundreds of Americans have gone to join the fight over there. Women are signing up and going to become part of this thing. For example, it says in the third issue of The Beak, subtitled A Call to Haraj, Islamic State doubles down on the dissemination of Islamic doctrines. The Quran is quoted 8 times, 35 hadiths are presented, 17 different Islamic scholars put forward are most notably, the progenitor of the Islamic State, Abu Musab al-Zakari, is quoted 6 times and given the status of martyr. The liquidation of treacherous Syrian Shufite tribe, killing all men and taking all the women as war booty, is justified on the basis of the example of Muhammad, who ordered that 2 men who stole his camels were punished by having their hands and feet cut off, their eyes pulled out with a hot iron, and they would be thrown out on an area covered with black stones near Medina. So they would ask for water to drink, but would not be given any until they died. That's Muhammad that they're talking about. Okay, so this is crazy. This is a screen capture of a lady's webpage who's left and gone to join ISIS. She was in the West, and she has here other girls, they're drinking and having sex and everything, and then this is me. This is me now with the AK-47 and the burqa. This is what they want. Caroline Glick also in her article, and I'll close with this, I had a very long teaching on apostasy and God's judgment on that. Maybe we'll do that next week as part of what Mike and I are doing. first hour. But Caroline then talked about one of the other problems that nobody's really talking about now. It says, yet, rather than understand that while jihadist forces may oppose one another, the threat they pose to the free world is indivisible. As Obama focuses on Islamic State, he is enabling Iran to expand its power in Iraq and Syria and to complete its nuclear weapons program. Obama, who insists that Islamic State terrorists are unique in their brutality, refuses to see the true picture. The truth revealed on Wednesday night is that Obama cannot lead a successful war against the forces of Islamic Jihad that threaten humanity. He cannot do so because he rejects the moral clarity required to confront the danger. He cannot successfully lead the war because, as we saw once again on Wednesday night, he is not a leader, he is a politician. And these reports out that the growth of the Islamic State, ISIL, has surprised U.S. analysts. They thought it was 8 to 10,000. Now it's 30,000. And I think the numbers really are probably closer to 100,000. And people are joining them every day. So anything that's going to happen is it's going to be a long slog. It's going to be tough. The coalition that's being put together doesn't include Syria, Iran, or Russia, of course. They're attacking or speaking out against what Obama wants to do. There's been some support given. Kerry says that Iran's going to be excluded, but he can't say how they're going to defeat this extremist group. Because we're not at war with them, exactly right. I heard a comment. And here, this is a picture of the Islamic countries that are supposedly joining in the coalition, but their support is described by even the New York Times, which is a big supporter of the Obama administration, as just very tepid. So, it's going to take a long time. It's a cancer. Some people say it grew out of our response to 9/11. It grows out. People that are saying these things do not understand the problem. And if you think it's going to go away, despite what the president says, that Al-Qaeda's on the run, Al-Qaeda's defeated, all of the Al-Qaeda groups that existed before 9/11 still exist and are still active. Some have been degraded to some point, but they have not. The Economist this week has this kind of interesting chart about who supports who, who's friendly and not, and maybe you can get the video and stop it there and kind of study the chart. It shows you who's neutral and who's not on the same page. The Islamic State pretty much nobody agrees with. You can see that. Iran has a couple supporters, Russia and Syria, and then there's a few, well, there's some other people over here, some Iraqi Shia militias. So it's an interesting chart, and it shows kind of the strange things that are going on. But it is a very strange world. This was reported on the front page of the Arab News yesterday. 43, and in the New York Times today, 43 Israeli soldiers who participated or part of the elite brigade that went into Gaza have now come out speaking out against what they called atrocities. And they said this: "We refuse to take part in actions against Palestinians and refuse to continue serving as a tool for deepening military rule in the occupied Palestinian territories." So the fact that people in America don't get it, it's true that people in Israel don't get it either. Caroline Glick talked about this thing with Iran last week, the International Atomic Energy, nobody even is talking about this except a few bright people. Last week, the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that Iran continues to hide key information about its nuclear program from the UN nuclear watchdog, despite its agreement to provide the IAEA with full transparency last November. And Netanyahu, in a 9/11 celebration, we'll play a couple clips of this. He said, essentially, don't strengthen Iran to weaken the Islamic State. That would be the worst thing that could be done.
We mourn with you on this day for the thousands who lost their lives in that horrific attack. All of Israel mourned on September 11th. In Gaza, they were dancing on the roofs. They were handing out candy. That's the moral divide. We mourn, they celebrate. Syria. Well, then project that. What would happen if the terrorist regime in Iran will have weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons? They control themselves today. They put up a good front. But they have tremendous ambitions. Not for Iran, for Shiism, from Iran. And those ambitions would be unleashed once they have nuclear weapons in their capacity. They must not have it. Now, the world powers are now negotiating with Iran, and I hope they make a good deal, because a bad deal should not be made. I'll tell you what a good deal is. The one that was made in Syria. Because what that deal said was, take the chemical weapons and the materials, the chemicals themselves and the means to make the weapons out of Syria. It didn't say to Assad, keep them, store them, and we'll put an inspector. You know, we'll lock him with a padlock and we'll put an inspector next to it. Because at any point, Assad could kick out the inspector. I'm not saying that's Inspector Clouseau, a good inspector. But the whole idea of breakout is you throw away the inspector and you rush. Once you've unlocked the storehouses, you rush to make the weapons. That's what Iran is seeking. Iran is seeking to keep the enriched nuclear material, to keep the centrifuges, to keep the means to make nuclear weapons in short order. We'll put a padlock on it, and we'll put an inspectors there. And then at a certain point, when there are international crises that consume our attention, and you know these never happen these days, right? Kick out the inspectors, break the lock, you break out. Within weeks, a few months, you have nuclear weapons. That's a bad deal. And if Iran has nuclear weapons, you will see a tremendous pivot in the world. No, not in the Middle East, in the world. You will see things you never imagined could be possible. Horrors that you couldn't even contemplate come to fruition. The ultimate terror. A terrorist regime with the weapons of the greatest terror of them all. We must not let that happen.
We must not.
Be fighting?
Whoops, excuse me. Well, we shouldn't. That is a leader with moral clarity. I think he stands in stark contrast to the President of the United States. It's a crazy world. I could go on and on and on and on, and we're way over time. So let's keep your head up. Stay focused on the Lord. Stay in the Word, and be aware of what's going on around you, because I think this is the time. And I think things will continue to unfold. God's not given us a spirit of fear, and so we should not react with fear. We should react as Christians would react, that we should react like we're getting ready to meet the King. So let's pray, and we'll get out of here. Lord, thanks for your word. Thanks for laying everything out for us in advance so that we would know and understand and be able to tell others so that they would know and understand. Lord, keep us faithful, holy, always prepared to meet you, our coming King. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Música